I'm Vicki Hogarth, and this is a NewsBreak26 special report. Paul Watson is a name synonymous with ocean conservation. A founding member of Greenpeace and a lifelong anti-whaling activist, Watson, who grew up in St. Andrews, New Brunswick, has spent over 50 years protecting marine life on the high seas. Recently, he was at the heart of an international legal battle, spending 150 days in prison in Greenland, after Japan sought his extradition on charges related to his efforts to disrupt their whaling operations. In a surprising turn, Denmark chose to send him to France, where his family now resides. Now reunited with his loved ones, Paul Watson joins us to reflect on his time in jail, the risks he's taken, and his unwavering mission to defend our oceans. Captain Watson, thank you for being with us today. How does it feel to be reunited with your children in time for the holidays after spending 150 days in jail?
Well, it was quite a relief to be released so close to Christmas. So after 5 months, I was really happy to be back to see my family, and just in time.
Can you walk us through that moment when you found out that Denmark wasn't going to extradite you to Japan?
I received a call at 8:30 in the morning on the last Tuesday, and my lawyer from Denmark said that the Minister for Justice had overruled the police and the courts and had decided to not extradite to Japan.
What do you think went into that decision? What do you think made them make that move?
Well, they were under an enormous amount of pressure worldwide, including President Macron, President Lula of France, the President of French Polynesia, the Prime Minister of France, people like Jane Goodall and Sylvia Earle and James Cameron, and about 1 million people who signed a petition. So I think all of that weighed pretty heavily on the Danish government.
Japan's expressed regret over their decision. What do you think? What's your response to that criticism?
You know, when I went into the court in January, July, when I was first charged, I was very confident because all of the evidence, the documentation shows that there's no validity to the Japanese charges. You know, I wasn't even there when the so-called offense took place. Nobody was hurt. And, you know, they made a deal with the person who was arrested that if he accused me of ordering him to do it, they would give him a suspended sentence, which he did. He got a suspended sentence. But after he was released, he said he lied to them to get that suspended sentence. So all that evidence was there. So I was very confident that I would be released. But it took the court 3 months to even look at the evidence. And so Japan was putting an enormous amount of pressure on them, even threatening to cancel hundreds of millions of dollars of offshore wind turbine projects unless I was sent there. So in the end, Denmark had to weigh whether they're, are they going to support the European Union's position or the Japanese position. But the great thing about this entire thing, these 5 months, is that it focused international attention on Japan's continued illegal whaling operations, in addition with the added benefit of focusing attention on Denmark's killing of pilot whales and dolphins in the Faroe Islands, which is a violation of the European Union's Berne Convention. So in a way, it was a campaign in and of itself.
Yeah, you've spent decades campaigning against whaling. Do you think this arrest, there's some silver lining that it's played an important role in drawing more attention?
Yes, my time in prison was really just an extension of the campaign, and it was a campaign in itself, and it was very, very effective. So I'm looking at, I think that this is going to go a long ways towards getting Iceland and Norway and Japan to stop whaling. The Japanese built this giant factory ship, which was built specifically for the Southern Ocean. And they didn't go down this year, and I think that we may have stopped them. But if not, we have 2 vessels in Australia prepared to intervene if they should return.
What do you think would have happened had you been extradited to Japan?
Well, if I had been extradited to Japan, I don't think I'd ever be coming home. First of all, you don't get a fair trial in Japan. You don't even go before a judge until you confess. And that confession can take months of daily interrogations until they break it down. And I certainly was not going to confess. And so Japan's got a very medieval judicial system. It's been condemned by Amnesty International, numerous human rights groups. For that reason alone, I thought it was going to be very difficult for Denmark to extradite me. And even if they had decided to do so, it would have went to the European Commission on Human Rights. That would have taken a little time, but ultimately they would not have sent me to Japan.
You mentioned some of your high-profile supporters, everyone from Emmanuel Macron to James Cameron, Helena Christensen, Pierce Brosnan. How important have these high-profile supporters of yours been to drawing attention to what you've been going through?
Well, I think it was enormously important. I mean, Denmark saw the display of support from all over the world, especially throughout Europe, from France. And when you get people like President Macron, Prime Minister Barnier, and President Lula of Brazil, I mean, that's a lot of influence on the Danish government. Also, the Prime Minister of Denmark herself was involved in protecting whales when she was younger.
There was a big rally here in a town you grew up in, St. Andrews by the Sea in New Brunswick. Your sister helped organize it. What did it mean to you to see that support from a small community that you spent so much time in your life?
Well, St. Andrews has always been very close to my heart. I haven't been able to go to Canada for, 14 years now because of, the Canadian attitude is they would send me to Japan. So, that has a lot to do with my opposition to the seal hunt and salmon farming and everything. But so someday I hope once I get off this Interpol list, I will return home and visit everybody. The next thing on our agenda is to go to Lyon where Interpol headquarters and confront them because many countries are using Interpol as a tool to harass activists. It's not just myself, but many others. And it's under investigation by a European committee on investigating abuse by Interpol. And my case has actually been an example of that abuse since 2017. So it's time to really blow up this issue, and not just for the benefit of myself, but for everybody who's being harassed by countries using Interpol as their means to do so.
What's your position on how Canada has responded, or have they responded at all?
Canada has made it very clear that if I were to cross into Canada, that I would be detained and extradited to Japan. The Prime Minister himself has said that. So so I've had good reason not to enter Canada. I've been freely able to enter the United States, Ireland, and Switzerland, France, but not Canada.
Will you continue your activism? What's next for you? What's on the horizon?
We continue to oppose whaling in Iceland, Japan, Norway, and doing everything we can to protect threatened habitats and endangered species on the high seas. I think this is something that everybody should be concerned with because, our oceans are being diminished severely. And if our oceans die, we die. We don't live on this planet with a dead ocean. So we have an obligation to protect diversity and interdependence of life in the sea, or else we're going to lose it. I mean, since 1950, the year I was born, there's been a 40% diminishment in phytoplankton in the sea. And phytoplankton provides 70% of the oxygen in the air we breathe and sequesters enormous amounts of CO2. And why is this happening? Because phytoplankton requires nutrients in order to flourish, and those nutrients are supplied by whales and dolphins and seabirds, which is the nitrogen and the iron and in their feces. And so when you diminish those species, you diminish the food supply to the phytoplankton. We don't live on this planet without phytoplankton.
What is your message to those who continue to support you?
Well, we certainly do appreciate the support, and that's what keeps us going. So in Canada and the U.S., the Captain Paul Watson Foundation, and then also Sea Shepherd France and Brazil, and we're working together as a movement, and we'll continue to do so, continue to grow, and get that support that is needed to protect the ocean.
Well, thank you so much for your time, and Merry Christmas. I'm glad you made it home to your family.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you.
A news and public affairs production of CHCO-TV, New Brunswick's only source for independent community television.